In the last video, we built out this Powerball screen portion of our app. This time, we're going to build out the Mega Millions side of our app. So let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to look at is pretty much the API. So let's jump back to Safari here. And again, this data is public free data. It's on NYC Open Data. And similar to how we did for Powerball, they have like some description of when it is. They have like how often it's updated. So the last update was the 26th. And you can go down here if you want to find some more info. But let's go to the fun part, the data. So from this API, we're going to be able to get the draw date, actual winning numbers that there were for Mega Millions, the Mega Ball, and even the multiplier. So it's one extra number from when we did Powerball, but we can still use it. And if you want to look at how the actual API looks, go over to here where we have actions, hit API, and then this portion right here, just copy it. And I'll actually add this in the description too, as well as the website, so you can find it much easier. Let's just add this here. Let's open a new tab. And I'm just gonna paste that there. And now we can see how the data looks. Let me zoom in because I'm blind, so yeah, so all right, so basically this is how it looks. It's in snake case, you see the underscore. And basically really similar to how a Powerball data looks. So it should be pretty similar to how we designed that. Let's jump to Xcode. Let's minimize this and jump to Xcode. Right. And pretty much, just as a refresher, so we can look at how the app looks right now and see how we're going to add it in. If we go to our simulator here, you see that we have this Powerball section right here. Basically, we're going to add a new tab for Mega Millions. So to do that, we have to go to our tab view. So let's maximize this. And then our tab view is pretty much, I believe, in our content view right here. You see where we have tab view right here? Now zoom into. And you see where we have tab view right here, right? And basically how we added this type of tab to make it say what we wanted. We minimize this portion and open up Xcode. You see, all we had to do was add a view inside of it. And then for that view that we wanted to have a section, we pretty much just add this .tab item. Let's just do the same thing. And we got pretty much the same thing here, Powerball and the image we wanted. So let's maximize one more time. And now we're going to test it out by just saying, starting off with just some basic text first. And this is going to start off by just saying Mega Millions. And then, just like we saw, to make it have a tab there, we just have to add a tab item. That, and then we'll put that in a VStack. Then the image that we're going to use for this system name, let's do number circle. We'll change it to something that we like more, but for now, let's just do that. And then let's just make sure that we make it that the tab is Mega Millions. I don't remember if this is one word or two. I think it's 2 words. All right. And now if we run this again, you see that now we got 2 tabs. We have a Powerball tab and we have a Mega Millions tab. Right? It literally just shows the text that we added here. But we're going to actually make this a view really similar to what we have over here for Powerball. But the first thing is, let's change the image that's shown here. So to find out, since we're using image and it's a system name one, right? That use a system name initializer. What we can do is use one of the images that Apple creates for us. So we go to just jump to SF symbols right here. And now we can pretty much search from any of these images to see which one kind of fits us more. All right, so let's go with something like dollar. So it's referred to like some type of cash. And we can just go to, yeah, so they have like $sign here. But since the other one has circle, let's use this one, $sign at circle. Copy name. Minimize this and jump back to Xcode and maximize Xcode. And then for the image here, just change the name that we have here, the $sign circle. Let's Command V and paste that. And then if we run again, just to make sure that the image is actually changed and it looks decent enough for it. Okay. So now we see a $sign here. Cool. So now let's get rid of just the text right here that says Mega Million and at least make it that the navigation title says Mega Million and actually get some data to show here. So let's get to it. All right. So first, what we're going to do is go over to our folder structure, right? And we're going to create a new folder just for hosting our Mega Million views and view model. So we'll start by saying new folder. We're going to call it Mega Millions. And then inside of it, we're going to say Command N. And we're going to create at first a new SwiftUI view. We're going to call this Mega Millions view. So last time we kind of did it step by step where I created the view model kind of after designing the view, but we already know we're doing MVVM, so we'll just create the view model right now. So inside the same file, I'll just say Command N again, and I'll go up to Swift file, and then we'll say next, then type in Mega Millions view model. And if you don't really get the idea of the Mega Millions view model, I'd highly recommend that you check out the previous video where we build out the Powerball screen. But just a quick synopsis is just like basically the Mega Million, the view model is like a place where we'll deal with like massaging or doing like extra work, like formatting stuff in the view model versus doing all that work in the view. It's kind of like help separate it's separation of concerns, as I said. Anyways, now let's start by creating our view model. Let's say class, I would say Mega Millions view model. And inside, let's just look at our Mega Millions view. So we have this right here, right? And from the last video, again, we know that we want our Mega Millions view to have access to our view model so that from our view model, we can pass it some data. So we're going to start by saying var view model and then give it the Mega Millions view model type. Another thing that we know is that whenever we get data like from our service and the view model has it and does whatever work you want to do, we want to make sure that we show that data immediately in the view. So to do that, one of the things we have to do is mark our view model with say an observed object or a state object. No, let's just go with observed object, but you can use either or, however you say that. Then now you might see a complaint where it says genetic struct observed object requires that Mega Millions view model conform to observable object. All this is saying is that like, yo, if you want to make it that this var is an observed object, you need to make it that whatever class you want to have this ability actually conforms to something else called observable object. And now if we go back here, you see that this error is gone. The only error you're seeing right now is because, well, since we added this view model as an extra dependency or whatever your parameter for our Mega Millions view, we have to update the preview. And the preview is pretty much what we show in our canvas whenever you see canvas. So if I go canvas here, you're not going to see it because the preview is saying you want to show a Mega Millions view, but you need a view model. But let's just hit that. We'll go like that. Now you'll be able to see a basic preview of the Mega Millions view. Nice. So we don't want it to say hello world, and we know we want to give it a navigation title. So we can start off just by saying navigation stack. And then in here we'll say v stack. Right. And then under v stack, as I said, we want to give it a navigation. We want to give it a title. So we say navigation title modifier. Next. Enter, sorry, and then just type up here Mega Millions. Nice, that'll look good. And now what we want to do is basically set it up where we can build out the view. We can just start setting up a basic view of how we want it to look, like just the UI. And then after that, we will adjust our services that we created in the last video to make it that we can get data from Mega Millions data. So let's just do that right and now. Let's get rid of all this extra stuff right there so we can see the screen bigger. So start by doing list, right? And then enter here. And then if we look at our data right here, see that it's just going to be a draw date, winning numbers, and then mega ball and a multiplier. So really similar to what we had for Powerball over here. So let's build up pretty much a similar thing. So I'll start fresh this time in case somebody new is joining, but after that we're going to create more reusable views. But for now, let's just start fresh again. So what we're going to say is basically, let's start by adding in the portion that we want for the date, and then we'll do the balls and then the mega ball and multiplier next. So we'll say like this, stack. And then the first thing we're gonna say is do something like a group box. And then we're gonna say text. And then, so same like what we were doing before. And we're just gonna say like, say the date is April 20th, 2025, right? And in here, we might want to do something. Oh, all right, so let's get out of the group box. And then right below here, what we're going to say is we want to show basically those same numbers that we were showing in the Powerball screen. So all we can do to do it really easy is the best way to do this would make a reusable view for these components. So you see how we have this logic here, and we're going to have to basically copy this and put it over to Mega Millions. The best way to handle this would be to create a custom view for that. But we'll do all the refactoring and changing up and simplifying the views in the follow-up video. That will be a little extra bonus, like a filler episode in the next video. So for now, let's just copy this logic that we have here. So it's basically having an H stack, a for each, and then we're going to do that. So let's jump back to our Mega Millions view. And for now, we can just start by doing an H stack. And then we're going to, inside the H stack, we're going to have a for each. And then our for each will be like 0, 0, not less than 6. Basically, we're going to say we want to show like 6 items. So for now, like 6 balls, just to mock up a basic view, and then we start filling it in eventually with real data. And then we'll say index in, and then everything inside here we'll say something like text, and then this would be, because index, this right here is a string, and if you're not sure, you're like, oh, you know it's a string, just pretty much just set option click it, and it says a type here int. So we have to do something like, instead just like this, and put index right there. Now you see 6 horizontal numbers. So what we want to do then is pretty much give it the same modifiers that we are pretty much doing for the balls in Powerball. So let's just jump back to Powerball row view real quick. And we see that all the only modifiers it's using are font weight, padding, and then like some color. Let's just Command C and copy this real quick. And then we jump to Mega Millions view. And then right under the same text that we have, just paste it here. All right. And instead of doing it yellow, since this is Mega Millions, let's make it a different color. So I'm thinking just go blue. And then our preview loads, and then we look like that. Now let's go over to content view. And we're going to replace this text that we had here in our tab view with our Mega Millions view. Mega Millions view. And the one that requires a view model, since we made it that it does require a view model, and we'll just paste that there. And now if we run, you'll see that we do see the Powerball section still, but if we click on the Mega Millions tab, we see our basic UI for our view. So that's looking pretty good right now. All right, so next what we're going to do is, let's see if we can start building out the service portion for Mega Millions and update it so that we can get Mega Millions data, get this data. Right? So, and we're going to probably need a new model also for this, since these parameters are different from our Powerball parameters. Let's just do the model first. So let's just open up Xcode. And we'll go over to our models. Go over to our models right here. And I'll minimize this so we can look at the parameters too. Get rid of this extra thing. And then, so they're similar but different. So let's just start by adding this in. So we'll say struct. Let's minimize this a bit. And we'll start by adding this in. I will say struct. I will say Mega Millions winning numbers. And from the last video, we know we're going to have to make this decodable so that we can use this. So that when so we can decode the data when we actually get it from the API. So let's just add that in from now. And also we know we're going to have to use identifiable on this as well. So let's just add that in too. So we're basically making that our models conform to these protocols so we can use them later on in our view. So again, one of the requirements for identifiable is that you must have a parameter or property that is called ID. And what I like to do is just use someone like this. So let ID, and then use UUID. And now we have our basic model, at least for this portion. Now let's fill out the other parameters that we are going to need. So we'll say let draw date. And right now it's a string. And also we can do like winning numbers. And we see this, I'd rather it be an array, but for now it is a string. But we found a way how we can pretty much convert our string right here to an actual array, which is the same method we're going to use from Powerball, which is the same method we're going to use in our Mega Millions winning numbers. So winning numbers, again, type this in string. And then we have Mega Ball. And if you're wondering how am I going to do this if I'm not writing the parameters the same way as they are in the API contract, right? In the API. So basically, you see how they're using snake case here, but I'm using camel case. Like you must be wondering, how is it going to be decoded if you haven't seen the other video? Well, basically, there is a decode strategy that we are going to add in our API when we're handling our service. Basically, check for this, check for any snake case, and basically convert it to camel case. Another thing is, let's just add the similar thing right here. Grab this, the Command C, and we can use the same logic. So basically what this is saying is, go inside the strings array, which is this here, has all the numbers that we need, and then based on every space that's in it, basically split the string by space and create an array. So I'm creating a numbers array. Similar logic, same logic that we did for the Powerball winning numbers. All right. And there's a trick too for date, but I'll hold on that one. Let's just jump back to starting up the API. So now we're going to go over to services. Let's maximize Xcode. And we're going to go over to service, and we're going to add a new protocol function to our protocol here. And this one is going to be for fetching pretty much Mega Million numbers. So I'll say func fetch Mega Million numbers. And because we're doing this by Swift concurrency, so we have to put async here, and then let's make it like throws. And we can have it return the model that we just created. So Mega Millions winning numbers. Right, we can use the same type of errors, that's fine. But now you see that like our class that was using that conforms to lottery services is complaining. So let's scroll down here and let's add the missing function that it's complaining about. Because this is such a lot, it's going to be real similar to here. And I'll show you in a later video how we can use generics to kind of simplify this. But for now, let's just close this up. So it's going to be Command Option and then left click. And then that's how you close large braces or brackets, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to start by saying func fetch Mega Millions winning numbers. And you can see how it auto completes. Like protocol is just like, yo, this is what you want. Let's just fill it out because that's what I need. And the strategy, what we have to do basically is use our endpoint that we have here, right? Again, this is in the description if you're wondering where this is. And we have to convert it to a URL. So first, let's just grab it. So Command C. And then we'll jump back to Xcode. Jump back to Xcode, and now we have to add a new endpoint for this. So I don't want to call this just endpoint, so let's just add like some names behind them. So I'll say private let Mega Millions endpoint this. Now we have the Mega Millions endpoint. We have the Powerball endpoint here. So let's just update that. And now we have to update it inside our Powerball function. If this is the first video you're seeing and you didn't see the previous one, you can just ignore the step. All right, and then let's just close back that function. Command Option left click. Close back that function. Command Option left click. Nice. All right, so now let's fill out our function that we have for our Mega Millions services. So to silence this warning where it's saying like, yo, missing return method expected to return whatever. All you have to do, basically it's saying that like, yo, this function says I'm supposed to return a array of Mega Million winning numbers. Let's just give it an empty array for now, just to shut it up. And now we will change that eventually by actually returning real data. But for now, let's quiet it. So what we're going to do is convert our Mega Millions endpoint to a URL. So let's do that. So guard let URL equal URL, and look for the one that takes a string, small s. And then we're going to pass in here Mega Millions endpoint. And then we're going to just say else. We know we have our errors that we can throw. In this case, we're going to throw a URL error. So let's just write that. Error, or URL error. And now, next thing we're going to do is actually use our URL to actually start getting some data. So we know the function that we're going to call inside this is can throw an error. So let's just put up a do catch from now. And then we're going to say let data. So it's going to return the function that we're about to call. And we'll say URL session -shared data task. And look for the one that takes a URL and is async throw. So this one right here. And then we're just going to put the URL that we created up here, right here. The Mega Millions URL, right? So now you're going to see kind of complain. It's saying that like, yo, this function call to data or passing in that URL can fail. So you have to mark it with a try. Nice. And it's also saying that, yo, this function is asynchronous. So you might have to wait for it. Let's just add a wait too. Nice. So now this is looking good. We have both. Once we call the API, we'll be able to get a response and a data, some type of data. Let's set some space to this. I feel like they're too close together. And now the first thing that we're going to do is basically convert our response type, which is this right here. Let's option click on it. We see that's a URL response. We're going to check to see if the response is actually good. Like if it's a 200 status code or like between or like 299 or something like that. So first to do that, we have to convert our response to a different type. We have to convert it to a HTTP URL response. So I'll say response, and then this is what I want to convert it to, the URL response. Let's say else, and then throw our lottery error, HTTP URL error. And if you're new to this setup of using throwing these type of errors, definitely recommend you watch the previous Powerball video, the first one, where we kind of set up all of this from the beginning. All right, so next what we're going to do is check to see if we can get a valid, if we got a valid status code. So we'll say guard, I'll say 200 dot 299, and then we're going to check if our status code is between that, any of those. And then if it's not, we want to throw an error. And the error we're going to throw is invalid status code, just like that. Now, with all of these checks, we've checked the response. We can convert the response type that was successful, and we check the response status code, and we know it's a valid status code. So now what we're going to do is start using the data. So to do this, we're going to basically convert our data to a different type. We're going to convert this data. So option, click on it. You see the type is data. We're going to convert that to this, our array of Powerball winning numbers. So to do that, the first thing we're going to get is something called a JSON decoder. JSON decoder. Then, remember how I was saying that, let me show you, how in the API it uses snake case, but in our models, I'm having it use camel case. So the reason why we don't have to worry about that is because we're going to add a specific strategy for decoding to our JSON decoder. So I'll say something like JSON decoder, that key decoding strategy, and we'll set this equal to convert from snake case. So if it's snake case, you'll convert that to camel case. So that's how we handle it. Nice. The other thing that we're going to handle right now is, see how we have this date here in this weird format where it's like, yo, you can't read this. What we can do is basically add make it that our decoder tells basically the system that like, yo, whenever you see dates like this, convert it to a date type, like a Swift date type that we can use. So to do that, all we have to do is add a new strategy. So what we're going to say here is, let's add some space. So we'll say, or start off by saying first, let's add a date formatter. Right? And then we'll just create that formatter. And then we have to give our date formatter, because this is what's going to convert that confusing date to like a more readable date. We'll say date format, let's say equal. And this is very similar to what we did in the previous video. I keep saying that, but it is. So, but I'll show it again this time. And then we'll just Command C and copy that date right there. And basically, the system basically wants to know what format is the date in, so that I can know how to transform it to like a date type, a Swift date type. So we give it this, but for the year, all you have to do is just translate that to YYY, which represents, well, year. And then for the month, MM represents the month. And then for here, for 25, we say DD. And then right here at the T part is very weird. So you have to put this, and then this. And then for the zeros here, just the HH. And then this to MM. And then for seconds, SS. And for these, just do capital S's. All right, now that we have the format set up, all we have to do is basically add to our JSON decoder a new decoding strategy. So this is going to be date decoding strategy. I like when Swift names them like this, so you can kind of guess a little bit. So yeah. And then you're going to go to formatted. And then in here, I'm just going to throw in my date formatter that I just formatted. All right. So now what we're going to do is actually the part that we actually use JSON decoder to transform the data type to our Mega Millions winning numbers. So we'll say here, we'll just say JSON decoder again. And then we'll say decode type, right? And then the type that we want to decode is, we want to decode it to, is our array of Mega Million winning numbers. And then this right here. Wrong one. Let's just copy Mega Millions winning numbers. Yeah. And then because you're referring to a type, at the edge of this, you have to put .self. And then for the data, remember, we have that data, this right here. And then you just paste this in here, data. And this returns a couple of things. One, this can throw an error, so you have to mark it with try. And if you want to check if something can really throw an error, maybe you don't believe Xcode, what you could do is just option click on the function, And you see, you give it one, it will give you like a description, some info, you know, and you can, if in the function signature, you'll be able to see that, yo, it says, yeah, this throws, so it just throws, right? So to fix this, let's first mark try here, right? And then it also returns an error. Because remember that this is what transforms our data to an array of Mega Millions number. So it returns something. So we're gonna say here, just say let Mega Million equal that. And then we can just have it that the function returns it right after it does that. Now, let's get rid of this portion here where we had the empty array, just to shut up the warning that we didn't like. We're going to get it back one more time, but this time because of the catch block. Because our success block case is done. That's our do case. Now, if we go to our catch block right here, what we would want to do here, let's just throw a lottery error. And let's do the unknown type. But we're going to pass in the system error that we get for every catch block and just do a localized description. Right? And now we have our Mega Millions service function ready to go. So now the next thing is we want to eventually make it that we can swap out this fake data that we have right here and basically replace it with some real life data. So to do that, let's add some updates to our Mega Millions view model. So we have to make it that right now our Mega Millions view model has the ability to use our services. We have to add the service as a dependency for it. So let's type it in. So to that services, we're going to call lottery services. And note we are using the protocol. And this is so that we can eventually, when writing unit tests, we can make mocks of our services. And then we'll say init, hit that. And then in here, we're going to say func, and then just create a function called fetch Mega Million winning numbers. Right? And then in here, we can just start doing this. So let's start by saying let, and we'll say winning numbers. And then we'll say something like service is. And then we'll say fetch, call the function, fetch Mega Millions winning numbers. And then because this is an asynchronous function, remember? So let's jump to it. I pretty much command click there and then hit this. You see that it is an asynchronous function, right? That means that wherever you're calling, it must be able to handle asynchronous tasks. So that's why it's saying your async call in a function that does not support concurrency. To fix this, all you have to do is the function that you're calling it in, just do async right here. There are other ways to fix this depending on where you're using it, but for this case, this is all you'd have to do. And now you see here it's complaining, you have to mark this with a try, because this can throw an error. Also, you want to handle that catch issue so that in case it fails, you want to do that. So cut it for a second. And then in the do block, just repaste it here. And then in the catch block, all we're going to do here for now is just print our error. Now, if this is successful, this winning numbers variable would be not filled out. So one other thing we have to do is actually mark it with an await, since this is an asynchronous function again. So again, we have to mark it with await here, and then also any function, if it's called in a function that does not support concurrency, you have to add asynchronous async to the function there. Now, next thing that we're going to do is, for now, we want to make sure we're getting the data. So let's just print it here. And then if we jump to our Mega Millions view, what we're going to test is first, whenever this view appears, we make it that we call the API right away. So let's fix this quick error here where it's complaining about our preview. So let's just give it that. And that's just if you want to be able to see the canvas right here as you do it. So what we're going to do now is basically go here, scroll up, and we're going to add a new modifier. This is task, and task is like going to be called right when the screen appears, and it's great for handling asynchronous tasks. We'll say await. I'll say view model dot fetch Mega Millions winning numbers. And then whenever this gets called, we know this function is going to get called. So let's just set a breakpoint to see if we're actually going to get our numbers. And In our last video, I showed why print isn't always the best way. So I'll leave it for now and I'll explain after I run it though. Let's run it. Need to update here too inside our tab view. So let's just maximize this again. And because we did add a new dependency to our view model, so we have to update it too in our tab view. So we can just say lottery service info. And let's run that. An even better way, we could even declare it as a variable inside our content view struct. That way we only initialize it one time. We'll do that right after, but let's just see what our view is looking like and make sure we're getting that data. So we're on the Powerball screen, it's fetching its data. And if we go over to our Mega Millions screen, and then we go back to Xcode, we can see that the breakpoint did get hit and it's still inside a do block. So that means that, yeah, we were able to decode it properly. And I want to show you why I was suggesting us dump the info instead of printing it. So when I hit next here, you're going to see where it's really hard to read this, y'all. It's hard to read this. But if we switch to doing something like dump, and then we run again, and then as soon as the screen appears, this API is going to be called. Right. Then let's go over to Mega Millions. API gets called. Then our breakpoint gets hit here. And then if we go next to dump, like we step down, you can see with dump, yeah, you can see with dump, we can see the data much more easy. You can see it much more easy. It makes way more sense, right? But the good thing is, well, yeah, we're getting the data. So let's stop this. And we can get rid of the breakpoints here, and we can minimize this as well. So what we're going to do now is actually, instead of just having this data locked to here, we're actually going to put it inside a published variable. So I'll start by saying add published var, and just say mega million winning numbers, and then write the type. I read mega million winning numbers, set it to be equal to that. And then instead of, we don't need to dump it anymore, but we also don't want to just have it locked here. So we'll have it that whenever we get the data, assign it here. Mega millions winning numbers. And from our previous video, we found out that whenever we actually do get this data, because we're going to update it in the UI, which could be done on the main thread, you have to mark this function with an @ main active. That will help with that fix. All right. So if you jump back over and we go to our Mega Millions view right here, right? What we're going to do is basically, instead of just having a list and then just showing this, we're going to swap this out. And we're going to say view model dot Mega Millions winning numbers, and then have it that we have access to each Mega Million winning number, and then just say in. And now if we should run this, right, we're going to see the same data, but you're going to notice that we see a lot more than just one, since we're actually using real data to basically determine how much the elements should be shown. But we aren't filling it out yet. So done, and we go over to Mega Millions, you see that we see a ton more. And you notice it's still just, yeah. So that's looking good. So now let's stop that and let's maximize Xcode. And the next thing we're going to do is basically get rid of this test UI that we have here and replace it with some new real data that we'll be able to get all those elements for each draw that happened. So for this one, for the date, we can start by changing it from a text being something called Mega Millions winning number. And right now we have it draw date as just like a regular string, but how the API gives it to us is in this format where it looks pretty crazy. But remember, we did adjust our services with a decoding strategy. And what I'm talking about is, just quickly, if we jump back to services, remember this portion here where we added a JSON decode? No, this one right here where we added a JSON decoder that decoding strategy. And we kind of gave it the format to expect from the API. Well, this is going to help us in a second. But before we do that, let's just fill out the view with like some of the data first, and then we'll work on the rest, the date part. All right, now we can actually turn on our preview here. See that right here? And now for the date, you'll see that now the date will be pretty much just like how they had it in the API response, but we'll fix that in a second. Now the next thing is we want to change the actual numbers. Let's show the real numbers that we're getting. So remember, in this for each, we're pretty much looping over a set of numbers. But in our Mega Millions winning numbers, like remember each element in there, if we jump back to our model, we created a custom computed variable that uses the winning numbers that comes to us as one string. So just to remind you, this what I'm talking about. So for winning numbers, we get it as just like one string. And with that computed variable, basically what's happening is let me minimize it so you can see both at the same time. What we're doing is basically we're going through winning numbers, that's one string, and then based on each of these spaces, we're transforming this into an array. So now this array is called numbers array. All right, so now we can go back here and let's maximize. And now in this for each, let's use that numbers array. So we'll say, boom, Mega Millions winning number dot numbers array. And we could use it like this, but from the previous video, we saw that it's better if we use our indices. That way, we can access each element in this array by the index. So we're gonna say dot indices, and then we still keep this portion here as an index. But what we're gonna do for this portion here for the text is we're gonna say Mega Millions winning number, and then we're gonna say numbers array, and then we're gonna access each element using that index. I'll just say index here. And now you can see that now we're seeing different values. I'm gonna zoom in to our simulator somewhere. Yeah, nice. So it's we're seeing different numbers for each date, and now our data is pretty much showing live. Good, so that's looking good. You might see this warning where it's basically saying non-constant range, not an integer range. One way to fix this really easily is just add like ID here, and then just that self. That way you can identify each index uniquely. And you'll see we'll get rid of that error, that warning. All right, so that's looking good. The next piece that we have to remember is that Mega Millions has two extra parameters. It has a mega ball and it has a multiplier. Let's just add those in now. So right here under our rows of numbers, right? Remember it's inside this H stack. Below this, what we're gonna do is just add a new one that says pretty much mega ball. And then let's open this up. And then inside here, I'll just access it again, Mega Millions winning number. And then I'll just put the mega ball right here. Let's just see how this looks in the UI. Looks decent. And now we can do something similar for the multiplier. So let's just copy this, Command C. Paste that right there. And then instead of it being mega ball again, we're just gonna make this multiplier. And then change the value, the property that we're using to just be multiplier. Now we'll see our Mega Millions view looking more like this. It's like, yeah, we're getting all that data. This looks pretty good. So what we're gonna do now is, remember when I was saying, obviously we don't want the data to look like this. I don't want to look on the date and have to guess like, oh, yo, the 25th was that Thursday or Friday or whatever. So we're gonna fix this real quick. So again, just as a refresher, we added a way how we could basically convert date strings, make it that our JSON decoder can convert date strings and know how to handle them and convert them to basically date types, Swift date types. So with this process right here, our JSON decoder will know that, well, if you see a date that in this format, basically you can convert it to a date type. So we're gonna do that right now. So we have it here, we gave it the format. Now if we go to our models, instead of using just a string for our date right here, right? And remember, that is how the API is giving us. It's giving us the date as this word string format. So to convert it, boom, all we have to do is, instead of using a string here, change this to date, right? And then when you go back to your view, inside Mega Millions view, this first text is gonna be complaining because it's saying like, yo, you're using a text view and you're passing me a date. I'm expecting a string. So you can't do it like that unless you make an extra change and add a new parameter to your text. So this is gonna be style, and then hit that, and then you pick date. So now our text will be able to accept a date type. All right, now when you actually change it and you add this additional param for that takes in a date type, and then if we rerun our preview, you might see a case where you don't see anything on the screen right now. So a quick way to fix this, and more than like what the issue is, if we go back to services, here you might see that we're using like for our date format right here, we're using like hours, minutes. Change this to just be common letters or lowercase letters. And then if you go back to the screen with your preview, you notice that now you see the date is now decoded and in the format that you would expect. So you can see now like the date for each pretty much drawing. So that's looking much better. So one thing that we can do right away is basically let's move this view that we have here, this Mega Millions row view, to its own custom view. Let's just cut it for a second. Let's just do Command X, cut that. And then we're going to go over to a folder right here. And then inside the Mega Millions folder, we're going to create a new folder. Let's call this one new folder. Let's just call this Mega Millions row view. And then inside here, we'll hit Command N, and then we'll say go down to SwiftUI view. We'll say Mega Millions row view. And then inside here, just replace the text that we already have here, and then just so Command V and just paste back what we had. We're gonna see some issues here where it's gonna be like, yo, I don't know what Mega Millions winning number is. All we have to do is just introduce this to our view or struct. So we'll just say let. Then I like to just copy the name instead of like writing all of that out again. And then just make sure that it is of the type that we're expecting. So Mega Millions winning numbers. And now we have to update it for our preview here. So you're gonna see that this is complaining right here. So this is something you can do if you want. Like if you don't care for the previews, you don't have to, then yeah, you're good. But for me, I want to show you the visual as I do it, like work with it. So I'm gonna do it. So for draw date, you can just hit that and then just pick some like distant pass. Winning numbers, we already know how this kind of looks. So we could do like something like 0, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 1, 6. Because remember, we already have a computed variable that's gonna convert this to an array. So it doesn't really matter how we handle this. And then for the mega ball, let's just add in someone else. Just do 0, 1 multiplier. Let's just do 0, 2. And now when our preview loads, we will be able to see basically how the Mega Millions row view will look, which is pretty much this right here. That's looking decent. So now the next thing that we're gonna do is if we go back to our pretty much our Mega Millions view, remember now we're gonna add back so it's not going to show anything here, and that's because remember we moved out all that row logic and we put it inside something called Mega Millions row view. And then if we open that up, now we can just add in this variable that we have here that we get from iterating over the array. Or iterating just means going through each element in the array. And now our view looks much more concise and it's much easier to read. Now we can see all of these right here. So let's just run it as a full app just to make sure everything will look decent. Grab you. And now if we go over to Mega Millions, we do see it. So this is looking pretty good right now. All right, so next thing that we're gonna do is basically one thing that can happen is basically sometime person might have a bad internet connection, or the API might just be taking too long. So what we're going to do is basically add a spinner that shows us as we load the data. So to do that, let's stop this. I will maximize again. I will jump to our Mega Millions view model here. And if you watch the previous video, you should kind of get the idea of how we're going to handle this. If you're new, I'll just explain it again. So we'll say at publish, and then we'll say something like var that is loading. Make it that this is a boolean, set it equal to false at first. And we can just minimize this stuff right here. And then right when we're about to call the API, we could say is loading is equal to true. And then after we get that the data, so after this stuff is already done, then we just set back is loading to false. Okay. So one thing to note is that we also want to, if there's an error, we want to set back is loading to false. We don't want to have a case where it's like the spinner is on the screen continuously while they might have gotten an error message. That's going to be mad annoying. All right, so is loading, set it back to false, also in the catch block. Now, to have this actually start showing us some visual, we have to go over to Mega Millions view, right? And then inside Mega Millions view, we're going to add an overlay. So we're going to add an overlay modifier. So right below, say navigation title, you could do like overlay. And then we can say inside here, we could say if view model that is loading, right? And then we could say if that's true, then we just say progress view. Scroll up a bit. The if view model that is loading will show the progress view. And one thing you can do is you can add like some text that you might want to show in the view. So we look for a one that takes a different initializer. Let's say title key. Let's go with that one. And then we could say fetching Mega Millions numbers. Right? Now, what's going to happen is as soon as we start fetching data, we're going to see that spinner. So let's go. And then let's move over to simulator. And then if we click on Mega Millions, we didn't see the spinner just now. It did appear, but the reason is the thing is this API returned to us really fast. So one way how to make it that we can check that this is happening is basically we could go to Mega Millions view model right here, right? And we could get rid of this state or just comment out this state where basically change back is loading to false. And if we run again, and then we go to Mega Millions, you'll see that we do see the spinner here. And so this is pretty much what would show if, say, the API took longer than expected. So that's just one thing. So we can add this back so that we hide the spinner. And then if we rerun again, you'll notice that once the API call is successful, we hide the spinner, which is exactly what we want. So now go over to Mega Millions and you'll see that, well, yeah, this is hidden. So next thing that we're going to do is, let's maximize this, is we don't want to just be printing errors. We want to know that if there is an error that occurs, that we're handling this as best as possible. So right now, and this is from pretty much our previous video, we actually created a custom set of error messages. So basically inside our enum lottery error, which is our custom error. So based on whatever error that might occur, say if we have a URL error, then this error message variable would be assigned this text of URL error. Same thing, HTTP URL error this way. If there's an unknown error, then we'll get something like something went wrong, and then we get the system level error message. So all we have to do then is just transform the error that we're getting to our custom error first. So we'll say something like if let custom error equal error as our lottery error type. And then we'll just say we need to put this error inside somewhere, and we need to add another variable to kind of show the error. So we have to add two more publish variables here. So the first one will be publish. Big U should be a little u or lowercase u. Publish var, and then this will be like, say, show error alert. So this will be a boolean equal false, and then we could add another one, publish var, and then this will just be literally the error message that we're gonna have them show. And this is again based on the enum value that's linked to it, empty string. And now inside here, first thing I'm gonna do inside when we transform our custom error is say error message is equal to custom error dot error message, remember? And then all we're gonna do is just show error alert, just toggle it. So basically it's gonna change it to true and says, yo, show the error pop-up now. Now, to make sure that this actually does happen, we have to go back over to Mega Millions view. And then inside Mega Millions view, we're just gonna add a new modifier, and this will be the alert modifier. So right here, let's just add something like that, alert. And I really like to use this one right here, is presented. And for the is presented, you'll see that this is asking for a binding boolean. What this means is that like we need a boolean that will be changing and that we want to monitor for changes. And the good one for that is our show error alert boolean. And it has to be, so this works fine, even though this says at publish, it can be handled as a binding boolean too. So if we go back to say add it in as a binding boolean, we have to put a $ first, like I did here. And then I'll do show error alert. And then for content, just enter. And now for the alert, just type in alert right here. And then for the title, text, some type of text. I remember we already have a string that we're doing for this. So it's a view model that error message right there. And now if we want to test out seeing, say, a potential error, let's go over to our services. And then we will pretty much just change something inside our Mega Millions endpoint or so forth to make it that an error will occur. And if we run this now, when we go over to Mega Millions, you'll see that we get the error, something went wrong, the server with the specified host name could not be found. So that's just like a head up. So you can just hit OK and that will get rid of it. So we know now that our error messages are working, like you will see an error message pop up. The issue that we're seeing here now though is that say if there's a case where we don't get some error messages, we just get this blank screen. The user doesn't know what to do. So let's fix that. So we're gonna leave our endpoint still with this issue so that we can test it out. And what we're gonna do instead is jump to our Mega Millions view. And then here where we have our list, which would be basically, if we have some data, we show it. We're gonna add an extra view here that says if we don't have any data, like the data comes up empty, we want to show a different view. So we'll say if view model dot Mega Millions winning numbers that is empty. We do that, and then let's add an else block here, and then this would be the case where if it's not empty. So if it's not empty, X, show our list of data. If it is, we're going to show a different view. And this is I'm going to use a content unavailable view for this. Take some type of title, text, I'll say, no Mega Millions numbers, please retry. And then for the system, we could just add like some system, like I like to use just a magnifying glass just to make it look like you're searching for it. Now, if we run this again, in its current case where we know we're going to get an error message, then we go over to Mega Millions, hit OK. This view now that when we don't have any error, we don't have any pretty much numbers to show, we see this and the user has an idea of what's happening. So one good thing though that we could do, so first let's fix this. Let's go back over to our service and let's just refix our endpoint that we have and make it that so that it works. And let's run it again just to make sure that we're still good. And oops, go over to Mega Millions, and we see that yeah, we're still seeing that data, so that's proper. All right, so now the next thing that we're gonna do now is basically we're gonna make it that the user can basically pull to refresh, and SwiftUI makes this really easy to do. To add in is a feature that can be really added with SwiftUI. So my canvas is stretching like crazy over here. Let's just minimize that. That's a bit. And then what we're going to do is basically just add a new modifier. I know like SwiftUI is all about really modifier. Well, it's not all about that, but you use different modifiers a lot. So under task right now, we're going to add a modifier called refreshable. And what we want to do for refreshable is basically whenever we pull to refresh, we want to recall the API, get some more data or something. So we're going to do this. So the same thing that we have in task, we just paste it in here. And the good thing about refreshable can handle asynchronous tasks. So now if I rerun our app, and we go over to Mega Millions, and we decide to pull to refresh, you see that spinner up there. Now if we let go, basically we recall the API. It's just happening really fast, and we're getting back this data really fast. So props to NYC Open Data for that. But yeah. So now we have our app where basically we can see the latest Powerball winning numbers, and we can see the latest Mega Millions winning numbers. So this is looking really good. We've come really far. In the next video, we're gonna tackle pretty much NY Lotto numbers. See if we can add a new section for this in here, so we can show the user also New York lottery numbers. After that, we're going to jump into some unit testing. So get ready for that. But again, remember the motto, anyone can learn anything with time, practice, and failures. And remember, if you like this video, just leave a like, subscribe, and add your comments. All right, I'm out.